This help video is going to talk you through Section 8.2 and introduce you to the Smooth Mover and the Vector Helper classes. We'll come back to this screen as kind of a review when we are done. So let's go ahead and jump to our scenario. We have a Newton's Lab 2 is the one I'm using right here, and I have a body that I put onto the screen. We're going to be looking at the code though for Smooth Mover, and we're going to look at this other helper class down here called a vector. So if we look at the code just a little bit to understand what and how Smooth Mover works just a little bit, a couple of things that we want to point out. Number one, it helps smooth the jerkiness of some of the movement. It makes it smoother by using double values rather than integers. And so a double value here, you can see both exact x and exact y are double values. A double is just a decimal, such as 3.4, 7.8, 9.2. 3.0 would be considered a double because it has the 0.0 on the end. And inside a Smooth Mover, it has a constructor, default constructor. It has a parameterized constructor here. But if you take a look, both of the constructors use a vector. And so vector is another helper class. We'll take a glance at it here in just a second. If I scroll down, we have methods move, set location, and get exact x, exact y. And that's going to be in decimal format. Again, see how it returns a double here. So it's returning a double. And then modifying and adding a velocity vector. So you can add a boost to your velocity vector. You can accelerate. Please notice again they're going to be using, they're doing velocity.set, so they're using that velocity. And get speed and some other items, invert horizontal velocity, etc. So you don't have to understand all of that code, but you should study it. Ask about things that you don't understand. The vector class is another helper class, and on this particular, if you take a look, it's a special class. It's down here as a vector class because we won't actually access it directly like we do in our worlds up here. If you notice, it's a public final class vector, which means it's accessible for use, but we're not actually going to create on our screen, we're not going to create a new vector. It's all going to be behind the scenes in the code. And so a vector is created with direction and length. And in order to understand that a little bit, there's another scenario I'm going to run here, and that's the marble scenario from later on in our textbook. We have some scenarios. But a vector is illustrated when I run this by the arrow that designates a direction and a length. And the length represents a speed. So if I have a real tiny length, it goes just a little bit. If I expand this out, if I have a longer length, then it's going to go faster. And so the length of the vector will increase the speed. And the objective of this marbles game is to hit marbles off without actually going off the screen yourself. And we will look at this scenario, but it's a nice way just to illustrate that vector. So it has length and direction. So that's the idea of a vector. If I go back to our code, there's one more thing that I want to show you about the Smooth Mover class, and that is that a Smooth Mover is what we call an abstract class. And if I go back to the code, you'll see here when a Smooth Mover is declared, it is declared as abstract. And what that means is we cannot create an instance of a Smooth Mover. If I go over here and I try to right click and create a Smooth Mover, I can't do that. I can create a body, place it on the screen, but I can't create a Smooth Mover. Even though it has constructors, Smooth Mover has constructors, I can't create an object or an instance of it on my own. It's only through a subclass that Smooth Mover will work. So the way that we phrase that a lot of times, remember, is that a body is a Smooth Mover, and that shows inheritance. Going back, one other thing that they will have you actually do is access the Java API on a lot of these. And so if I go back to my Google screen, or if I just Google, when you access the Java API, I would go ahead and bookmark this And remember, the Java API is where they store all things, methods, packages, everything related to Java. And I just Googled Java API and I clicked on it, but I bookmarked this. So I put it in my favorites and I have it bookmarked a couple different places probably. But I know you're going to have to be taking a look at the Java AWT, and the color class is one that they're going to have you do. And I also know that they have you access the Greenfoot API. And you can access that through your Greenfoot interface, but you can also just Google it. So if you kind of forget, how do I get to that documentation, you can Google Greenfoot API or Greenfoot documentation, and it will bring you here and you can look at the documentation. It's set up just like the Java API, where you have the name of the class, you have the constructors, you have the methods. Just like in the Java API, we have the color class, we have all the instance fields, you have the constructors, and you have the methods. And so that is one thing that you guys will be looking at a little bit later on in the chapter. So to help with the smooth mover and vector classes, just to review, smooth mover uses doubles to make it more realistic. It uses a velocity vector that has direction and speed, and it is abstract. You cannot create an instance of a smooth mover.